Several leading economists, international institutions, and think tanks have been praising the rapidly developing economy of Vietnam. The country had undergone tremendous changes over the past few decades. Its economic performance has led to the reduction of the country's overall poverty, given birth to several billionaires, and posted industrialization that immediately catches up to its neighboring countries. It has garnered the eyes of these prominent officials not simply because of the changes made recently, but also because of its economic future. Many officials have stated that the next Asian economic tiger that is poised to become the next high-income country will be Vietnam, the country that will follow in the footsteps of South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore. The features that are paving the way for Vietnam's future are stated to be foreign direct investments, industrialization drive, the emergence of state-of-the-art infrastructures, and a long list of others that have all been clearly showing the rapid growth of Vietnam's economy. At the same time, however, one still cannot forget about Vietnam's past. Once touted as one of the worst economies in the entire world after being plagued by serious conflicts and the failure of a command-based economy. There were massive amounts of issues that constrained Vietnam's economy just a few decades ago, yet just out of nowhere, something changed. Indeed, something did change, something big. This monumental change that led to Vietnam's stunning economic performance to where it is today can be traced back to the mid-1970s. When the United States military retreated from Vietnam in the mid-1970s, both the country's economic structure and basic infrastructures were in the wrong hands. On the one hand, many of the country's essentials were devastated, bridges to roads, schools, and even its people. On the other hand, it was also controlled by a centrally planned government. In other words, the government handling Vietnam at that time was the one governing the goods and services provided in the country. They were dictating what happens within the country through their state-owned enterprises. A command-based economy, however, was the wrong economic structure to employ in a country seeking to rapidly develop and industrialize. Hence why the countries that used it in the past had failed to grow, which then led to reforms sometimes violent in other countries. India in 1991, China in the 1970s, and the fall of the Soviet Union have all caused several countries around the world to follow. The changes were very simple. Each respective economy had changed, a change where the government, which used to be the provider and decision-maker in the production of goods and services, would now fall into the hands of the private sector. The private sector then rose as the provider of goods and services rather than the government. This very same concept was seen in Vietnam. In 1986, the Vietnamese Communist Party set out to change its centrally planned model of the economy to one that is utilized by Western countries. The structure employed would be the adoption of a market-based economy where the market forces would be the ones to decide their fate rather than the government deciding. A plan that even had its name known as Doi Moi, translated to renovation or innovation. This plan had set out for the government not only to hand out the market structures to the private sector, but also to help encourage them to become more productive. Doing so would see the privatization of several of its state-owned enterprises, an initiative that would lead the government to either sell its companies directly to a private entity or through enlistment in the public stock exchange. According to a report by the World Bank, when the privatization package began, the number of state-owned enterprises was reduced from over 12,000 in the early 1990s to around 1,000 by 2010. As a result, a Business Perspective paper then saw considerable achievement. These state-owned enterprises saw tremendous growth in their revenues and profit, which was a result of the more market orientation of privatization. The main objectives of the privatization reforms, after all, were to create fair competition, improve the market system, and enhance the performance of each respective company. Secondly, one of the most important factors that helped push the entire agenda of a market-based economy is land reforms. The Vietnamese government recognized emphasize the need for agricultural productivity. For them to see rapid economic growth, eradication of poverty, and collective presence and usage of abundant labor, they would need to recognize private land use rights. Land reforms were very crucial, simply because they were the same instruments for economic growth seen in the East Asian tigers. Taiwan and South Korea, for instance, respected land rights for their citizens and even distributed lands properly. Today, we can immediately see the impact of how land reforms changed Vietnam and these East Asian tigers. The dataset published by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States shows clear data on cereal yield. The data of cereal yield as measured in tons per hectare was over 6.21 tons per hectare in South Korea, 6.59 tons per hectare in Taiwan, and over 5.8 tons per hectare in Vietnam. Compare these yields to, say, the Philippines, which experienced weak land reforms, sees only 3.77 tons per hectare of cereal yield. Even Thailand and Malaysia also saw a poor agricultural performance at only 3.02 and 3.65 tons respectively. Proper agricultural performance through efficient land reforms had segmented the foundations for Vietnam's future industrialization by making them a net exporter of agricultural produce, yielding foreign currencies for the purchase of manufacturing equipment in later years. Following the land reforms program, the Doi Moi Reforms would also see the decentralization and deregulation of the economy. This both allowed for more local decision-making and greater autonomy for state-owned enterprises, and as well the opening of the country's market. Previously, Vietnam's market was constrained to domestic economies and some connection to other communist countries. This was also one of the big issues in Vietnam's economy after the fall of the Soviet Union. Soon after, however, they opened their economy to every single entity around the world. Doing so resulted in the influx of foreign goods and services through international trade, following the inflow of foreign investments. The trends of changes started with deregulation and decentralization, followed by the removal of an embargo by the United States, and then, the most important turning point of all was the ascension of the country to the World Trade Organization. These all helped to build Vietnam's economy to where it is today. Now, there was only one catch. The Doi Moi reform period did not mean that Vietnam would fully transition into a market-oriented economy. It did not follow the full-on neoliberalism style of economy implemented in Western countries, but don't get me wrong, it is getting there. Every year, the government of Vietnam is continuously pursuing more and more market orientation to its economy. But during its economic ascent and how it is performing today, it is still adopting this so-called socialist-oriented market economy, an economy that would combine elements of socialism and market-oriented principles. In this system, the government, or the state, plays an active role in regulating the market and ensuring that social welfare is prioritized. Vietnam's government continues, even to this very day, the ownership of many other state-owned enterprises in key industries such as energy, telecommunications, and transportation. This economic model is still at times debated. Some have stated that this model still ceases to see the huge potential that a market-based economy could bring, while others have also stated that this was essential to the overall economic growth of Vietnam. A research article once stated that these state-owned enterprises had accelerated industrial development in Vietnam, which has been coined by several researchers to be a good example of state-guided capitalism. Furthermore, state-owned enterprises' role in Vietnam's modern society can largely be seen in the likes of joint ventures. Following the 1987 law on foreign investments and later amendments saw the influx of foreign investors. These investors, however, at times invested in the country in the form of joint ventures. They would use their own company to set up a subsidiary in Vietnam, which would also be joined by a state-owned enterprise. This foreign party would would, therefore, not only contribute to Vietnam's overall capital contribution in foreign currency, but also through technical know-how and the facilitation of knowledge transfers. And throughout all of these, the Doi Moi Reform period, albeit at times debated upon, still became the centerstone and foundation for Vietnam's economic success, one that transitioned the entire war-ravaged economy to one of the fastest-growing countries in the entire world. From 1990 to 2010, the country grew at an annual average of 7.3%, whereas per capita income almost quintupled, with a yearly growth of 5.3% since 1986. But anyway, the rise of Vietnam's economy is truly undisputed. The model which worked for the past decades may still work in the future. Do let us know what you think. Will Vietnam continue this socialist-oriented market economy, or will it eventually change to a full-on Western-style economy? Thanks for watching.